Hi, I'm Ela, and I'm a co-founder at EduFund, and I'm here today to talk to you about the ABCs, or maybe I should say the 1, 2, 3s of how to plan for your child's education expenses. So first things first, I'm sure as a parent you want the best for your child or your children. What parent doesn't? And of course, their education is no exception to that rule. Whether it's finding them the best fit school or the best fit university, I'm sure that this is something at the top of your mind pretty regularly. But unfortunately, what a lot of parents don't realize until it's too late is that the costs of education are skyrocketing globally. That's why if you're a parent, you probably want to start thinking about saving and investing early, but also being disciplined about how much you invest for your child's education each month, and make sure that you stick to the plan that you've created for yourself. And if you're confused on how to start expensing for your child's education, well, you've come to the right place, because we're going to give you a few tips and things to keep in mind while planning for your child's future. One of the most important things to ask yourself when planning for your child or your children's higher education is, where are they going to study? Now, I know no parent wants their child to leave them, but this is an ultimate reality and of course for the child's benefit and for their growth. But it's always wise to start thinking if your child is going to study in India or if they may want to go abroad, like to Canada or Germany or the UK. There are so many options for your child to consider. Now, I know it may be hard to determine this if your child is young, but that being said, you can always try to plan around what you hope your child will do. And of course, if they change their mind later, that's also okay. On top of that, you may also want to consider if your child is going to go abroad, would it be at the UG level? Would it be at the PG level? Or would it be for both? Or maybe your child wants to stay back in India, or maybe you want your child to stay back in India, and you decide that both degrees are going to be pursued at home. Typically, higher education institutes abroad cost a lot more than they do in India. So if you're looking to send your child abroad, or they've decided that yes, they definitely want to study engineering in Canada and they're all ready, then look beyond the costs of just tuition. Think of all the additional costs that could potentially stack up. For example, the cost of living, the cost of transportation, the cost of their food, the cost of the books to study, and just simple lifestyle costs that over time can definitely accumulate if you don't plan for them. Now, if you're confused on all these expenses and what they may be, you can definitely communicate with experts who can give you a bit more clarity and help you create a roadmap. One thing that you may also want to consider if you're sending your child abroad is investing in US stocks and equities. Why is this so important? Well, unfortunately, the rupee has been depreciating against the dollar in the last 10 to 15 years, meaning that the rupee is an actually weaker currency than the dollar, but that also means over time, if this trend continues, you're going to be paying more money in foreign tuition than you would for a parent that lived in the respective country. I know that sounds a little bit complicated, but never fear, because we have an example to show you that will make it a little easier to understand. So take a look at this table here. We have tuition and living expenses for 2 different years, one in 2004 and one in 2021. The tuition fees and living expenses are exactly the same, $50,000 and $25,000 respectively. But where there is a big difference is on $1 to 1 rupee. So $1 in 2004 was around 45 rupees. Now, in 2021, $1 is 73 rupees. That's a massive change. But why does that matter in this example? Well, if you look at how much a parent had to pay for tuition in 2004, it was around the mid 30 lakh range. Now, 17 years later, that same amount of tuition and living fees are a whopping 55 lakhs. That's a 61% increase in the amount of tuition a parent has to pay. And that's keeping in mind the fees didn't change at all. Imagine now the fees changing and going up each year, coupled with the change in currency. If you aren't scared, you should be. So if you're looking to send your child abroad, the moral of the story is you may want to consider an international equity account. If you're going to be spending in, let's say, dollars, why not earn in dollars as well? An international equity account can certainly help to mitigate currency depreciation. So another really important thing to consider while you're planning for this expense is, what are the tuition fees actually going to cost? There are plenty of resources available for you to do your research, but it's really essential that you at least have an approximate idea of how much you're going to have to save and invest. This is really important because it can impact the amount that you invest and save over time. And once you have that approximate, then you can very easily think of starting a SIP, a systematic investment plan, that gets deducted from your account each month, and you can contribute towards your child's education. Now that you know the approximate cost, the next step is to figure out how many years you have to save and invest that amount. There's a saying, the earlier you start, the better you save. Figuring out if your child is going to do an undergraduate degree, and that's what you're saving for, or if your child is going to do their master's at 25 years old, is really important, because the more time you have, the more you can save and grow that amount of money. Let's take an example, because I know everyone loves examples. So let's assume that your child is going to start their undergraduate degree at 18 years old. For many of us, an undergraduate degree is a defined event, meaning that it will most likely happen when the child is 18 years old. Let's take that example a step further. Let's say you're going to start investing 4,500 rupees a month when your child is just born. That means it's 4,500 rupees a month for 18 years. That can help you save around 50 lakh rupees if you start an investment portfolio. And that, my friends, is the power of compounding. But in order for us to plan for the future, we must also be aware of the present. As parents, you want to make a list of all the assets and liabilities that you have. In addition, you also want to make sure that you're not mixing up your investment goals. Don't try to use your retirement corpus to expense your child's higher education dreams. Similarly, try avoiding investments in illiquid asset classes that actually can't be exchanged for cash, such as real estate. Your child's education is most likely a defined event, but the sale of a piece of land or property may not always be. So choose your investments wisely. If you're investing for your child's or children's higher education expenses, then another important factor to consider is rebalancing. I know what you're thinking, another complicated finance term. Don't worry. I'm going to make it simple. Let's assume you start investing when your child is young. You have potentially more risk appetite and a longer time horizon until your child goes to school. Therefore, you can probably invest in something like an equity fund. However, as your child grows older and comes closer to their goal of going to college, you may not be able to take as much risk on. So you may want to have an exit plan in place and move to a relatively safer fund like a debt fund. Now, if this still sounds complicated, don't worry, we're going to be coming out with a few more videos on equity and debt funds to help make it easier for you. Smart parenting involves smart planning. With the costs of education going up as much as they are, it's probably wise that you as a parent start at least thinking about this planning journey today. A small amount invested today can go a really long way tomorrow. So I hope this video was useful for you to at least start thinking about what all goes into the planning journey for your child's education expenses. If you have any questions or comments at all, please leave them below. We're more than happy to get back to you and help you as much as possible. We post 2 videos a week, so please subscribe to our channel, and happy investing.